Why do marriages fail? What makes one marriage successful and another a failure? You might think there are many reasons, but I find that it often boils down to the same 5 reasons. And I'm going to share those with you today so that you can avoid failure in your marriage. Hi, I'm Kelly Case, licensed counselor and marriage coach. I take marriages that are broken and unfulfilling and make them first class. This channel is for people who want a happier home, but that just don't know how to get it. So be sure to subscribe so that you can be notified whenever I upload anything new. I've seen a lot of failed marriages in my life. You probably have too. My grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, friends, clients, and even my own first marriage. In fact, in the last 3 generations of my family, there has been exactly a 50% divorce rate, which is on par with the rest of society. Why is this? Why do people fall in love, get married, have kids, and then grow to hate each other? And does it have to be this dang difficult? How can you keep your marriage from failing? I learned a lot of lessons through the marriages that I've watched. In fact, I've devoted my life to decreasing the divorce rate in the world. And in order to do that, I've got to understand what is causing it, right? So after a lot of study, I've narrowed it down to 5 reasons, and I'm going to share those with you today. Let's see how your marriage is measuring up. The first and most obvious reason is lack of commitment. If you get married and you don't mean your marriage vows, then they aren't going to do you much good. If you are cheating on your spouse, whether that's physically, emotionally, or even just in your mind through pornography, your marriage will fail. Many people don't close the door to other options when they get married. Sometimes they think that they did until a new option falls in their lap and they let things go a little too far. Starts with innocent flirting at work or maybe on social media, and then it turns into thinking about that person all the time, and then eventually finding that you want something more with them. Sometimes it's not about actually cheating, right? The lack of commitment comes from keeping the door open to divorce if things don't work out. Of course, divorce is a legal option, and in some cases, it's even a spiritually and religiously accepted option. But it should never enter your mind as an option unless you're in a situation that would require it, such as physical abuse or infidelity. If divorce is an option for you just because your needs aren't being met like you think they should, or because you're just not finding the relationship exciting anymore, then you're not truly committed. And sometimes commitment is more than what you think. Commitment is about more than just staying married. It's more than not cheating. It's more than deciding not to divorce. Commitment is turning to your spouse instead of to mommy and daddy. Commitment is having eyes for your spouse only. Commitment is having your spouse's back in the good times and the bad. Commitment is taking care of your spouse when they're sick or when they aren't feeling their best. Commitment is a willingness to compromise, and commitment is doing things to keep the flame alive, to keep the relationship exciting. Commitment is getting out of your comfort zone and being willing to do whatever it takes to make your marriage great. If you aren't committed in all of these ways, you are risking failure in your marriage. The second reason marriages fail is because of a lack of connection. In many marriages, there's just no connection, no spark, no intimacy. Why? Because someone isn't being vulnerable. You see, the driving force behind connection is vulnerability. Being vulnerable means opening yourself up to the possibility of emotional harm. It means risking your rejection or abandonment. It's a very hard thing to do, especially if you have been burned before. And let's be honest, all of us have been burned before, some worse than others. But truth is, we all need deep connection and true intimacy. It's the reason that we started dating our partner in the first place. It's the thing we were hoping to feel. Sometimes when we feel rejected, hurt, or abandoned by someone, we close ourselves off to them forever. Do this with your spouse, and your marriage will fail. 100% guaranteed. They might stay married to you, but staying married isn't the definition of a successful marriage. A successful marriage is happy, and fulfilling, and satisfying. If you want a successful marriage, your only option is to be vulnerable with your spouse. Part of being vulnerable requires having a voice, speaking up when you're not happy. So many people just do whatever their spouse wants, even though they're miserable. That doesn't create connection. Keeping the peace, being quietly submissive, and neglecting your own wants and desires never results in true intimacy. It's a one-sided relationship. You have to be vulnerable to say, hey, I know this means a lot to you, but I actually really hate doing it. Can we talk about it? And can we figure out a compromise? Or, it's not okay to talk to me that way. I don't like being the butt of all your jokes. I need you to stop. Or, I'm really wanting to spend more time together. Or, I really want to spend more time doing some of my hobbies. Or, I have a different view on such and such. Can we talk about it? Whatever it is, you need to have a voice. You need to maintain your identity. If you don't, you will pull away from your spouse, not draw closer. You'll shut down, not become connected. And the number one way to destroy connection is through criticism. When you get criticized, you immediately feel defensive, like we're on different teams, like this person doesn't really understand me, this person doesn't really care about me, this person doesn't believe in me. So if you want to feel connected in your marriage and you want to keep it from failing, you got to keep a tight rein on your criticisms. I see couples who just let criticism fly out of their mouths towards each other without even a second thought. And all I see is distance, distance, distance. Each critical comment pushes you further and further away from each other, leading you closer and closer to a failed marriage. The third reason marriages fail, and I actually think this is the most common one, is a lack of personal responsibility. What do I mean by this? Most of the couples that I've known who decided to end their marriage got to that point because they both thought that the marriage problems were the other person's fault. They felt helpless to fix their marriage because their spouse was the one making the marriage so awful to be in, and their spouse wouldn't change. So what were they going to do? Live miserable forever? For example, let's take John and Carrie. John wasn't a very good listener, for being honest. Carrie would share her feelings with him at the end of the day, and he just didn't seem to have compassion for what she was going through. He just didn't seem to get it, didn't seem to understand. And instead, he was always just trying to fix it and tell her what she should be doing differently. That wasn't helpful to her, so she started spending time with her girlfriends because they were supportive and they were compassionate, and she really enjoyed talking to them more than she enjoyed talking to John. So she found herself on more and more girls' nights. And when she was out on her girls' nights, which John was totally fine with, he would sit at home and spend time on his phone. He would watch YouTube or he would watch more TV. And as a result, they became less and less connected. Carrie started saying that she didn't really feel like having sex anymore because she wasn't feeling connected to John. John found himself irritable because he wasn't getting any sex. And he started making sarcastic remarks about things that Carrie was prioritizing. Carrie became defensive in every conversation because it seemed that she just couldn't do anything right in John's eyes anymore. They came to counseling, and Carrie complained that John was emotionally abusive, and John complained that Carrie was denying him the intimacy that he needed. She wanted him to be more loving before she could be intimate with him again. He wanted her to be intimate before he could feel loving again. Who goes first? Who should change? Whose fault is this mess? Yes, both. John said that he can't live in a sexless marriage. Carrie said she can't have sex with an emotionally abusive husband. They're stuck. No one says, me, I'll go first. I'll be the best spouse that I can be, and let's see what happens. Why? Because doing that's risky. Doing that might mean being a fool and or being hurt. Guess what? Pointing the finger at the other person and saying that you can't change because they won't change results in a failed marriage every single time. Always be asking yourself, how can I be a better spouse? What did I contribute to the argument that we had? How can I explain myself better? How can I be more loving? How can I be more respectful? Because as long as you're waiting for them to change first, you'll be waiting for the divorce to be finalized. In a minute, I'm going to tell you how to get better at each of these areas so that you can better fail-proof your marriage. But first, let me share with you the other two failure tactics that I see in marriages. The fourth reason marriages fail is because someone or something is being abused. This could be physical abuse, emotional abuse, or substance abuse. If one partner is an alcoholic or a drug addict, they will choose their substance over their spouse always. This is a surefire way to fail at marriage, choosing something else over your spouse. So there's not a whole lot that I'm going to say on this one except get help for your addiction. If you are abusing your spouse, that's not going to result in a successful marriage. I think we all know that. So find out what is leading you to be physically or emotionally abusive and seek counseling for it. If there is physical abuse, you need to physically separate until you can figure this out. And this might be necessary in the case of emotional abuse as well. The fifth reason marriages fail is because they get stuck in the reality phase. In that honeymoon phase, the first phase of marriage, there's lots of oxytocin, lots of excitement, and most importantly, lots of assumptions. Assumptions about who this person is and what they will be in your life. You assume they're the perfect fit, your soulmate. You say, where have you been all my life? There's a high. It's that thing that love songs are made of. It's like a romance movie. You feel closer than ever. But it might be an artificial closeness because it's based on who you think the other person is. And what do you think they are? You probably think that they are the image of the person that you have created in your mind for them to be. And you've created them to be the thing that will finally make you feel complete. They are the one you've been waiting for. You tell your parents and your friends about how wonderful they are and how much you have in common. The problem is they're probably not showing you their full self. And even if they did, you'd probably overlook a lot of the red flags because of what you believe they are or can be to you. In other words, our oxytocin and excitement and our hope cloud reality. You let down your boundaries, you become completely enmeshed because you believe this to be almost perfect and safe. You fall in love, and it's easy. But that second phase of marriage is the reality phase. The honeymoon phase can't last. Our endorphins can't stay high forever. Eventually, after spending enough time together, you're going to begin to see the person for who they really are. And they're not you. And they're not what you dreamed them to be. They are a real, in the flesh, human with flaws and quirks and differences. This is why I call it the reality phase, because you're faced with the reality that they're not you and you are not them. You each have your own way of doing things, your own values, your own needs. Maybe what you used to find cute is now annoying. Maybe you're once again dealing with needs and desires within yourself that this person is not meeting. At this point, which is often after you're already married, you may begin to question your decision to be with this person. Did you make a mistake? Can this possibly ever work? You see, you're in limbo. Your endorphins have subsided, but that commitment and intimacy that you'll get later in your marriage are not yet there to sustain you. So you face a dilemma, and you're either going to need to integrate or separate. The two either need to become one, or they need to separate before they kill each other. So in an attempt to integrate and make it work, you may start trying to change your spouse and make them into the person that you want, that you need, that you thought they were. This can create power struggles. Many times a marriage stays stuck in this phase forever, or it ends. It's sad because the truth is they just don't know that this is normal and that there are tools to work through it so that you can get to the next stage. So the reason that many marriages fail is because they just kept trying to change the person into who they thought they were or who they wanted or needed them to be. And they never accepted them for who they really are and learned to compromise, learned to be flexible, and learned to love the person that they married, flaws and all. They just can't give up on that ideal image that they had of what it should be. And if you want to have a successful marriage, you're gonna have to accept your spouse for who they are and then work to compromise with them as needed, but not to change them into some imaginary person that you have created in your own mind. I created a program that I believe can fail-proof marriages because we take a step-by-step approach to each of these areas that we've discussed today. We don't do a whole lot to address abuse or addiction. So if I talked about that and that's your situation, then I think you need to seek counseling in your local area. But if your issues revolve around a lack of commitment, lack of personal responsibility, lack of connection, or lack of acceptance, I can help you. I've crafted the program to uncover the root issues and heal them from the ground up. Register for the First Class Marriage Program and discover for yourself how to create a marriage that will stand the test of time. My hope for you is that you'll discover the keys for a lasting marriage. A marriage that has you smiling at each other from your rocking chairs on the front porch when you are 95 years old. I'm going to link to my website here along with other helpful videos on this topic. You'll see them at the end of this video so that you can get more help. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it so that more people can see this valuable information.